and welcome to the Tales of Agmar podcast, which is brought to you by me, Sinjin. I am the creator and writer of Tales of Agmar, which has been a one-man creator passion project for at least 5 years now. It's taken a blend of a few other things that I've done in the past that no one's ever seen, so this is my first time really ever making something to go and release it out into the big wide world. And so I hope you guys will like it. Just for some introduction about me, I like to think of myself as a storyteller. I've been telling stories to people for a couple years, and I'm a very, very amateur writer. Not a lot of people have read my stuff because it's just not really out there. Like I said, this is my first project that's really going to go out into the world. Now I want to jump into more of what Tales of Agmar is, which is hopefully why you're here listening to this podcast. Now, Tales of Agmar, I like to call it more of a sci-fi fantasy kind of universe, and not because it's like, some like weird sci-fi fantasy, if that makes sense. I in the creation of this, I had labeled it as that at some point, and then realized that there were some other like sci-fi fantasy labeled things, and that they might be a tad different. So just for some clarification, when I'm saying sci-fi fantasy, I mean I not only have like elements of that science fiction genre and fantasy, but I also literally have like science fiction and fantasy in the same universe. So Tales of Agmar, like I'm saying, is a massive universe. It has a number of planets, and there's a main planet called Agmar, hence why I called it the Tales of Agmar, because that's where a lot of main events happen, and it's kind of the focal point of this galaxy. Funny enough, it's actually Agmar that has those fantasy kind of elements. So just to give you a quick preview of the big picture of Tales of Agmar, you've got a bunch of stuff going on in space, and that involves a faction called the Ellonist Republic, who is my human spacefaring faction. The reason why I have them specifically labeled as the human spacefaring faction is there's also a number of other human factions that are not spacefaring. So the Ellonist Republic is the only one. They come from a completely different planet called Ellon. Okay, so they're off there to the side. We're not going to worry about them. We're going to focus in on Agmar, so getting a little bit more onto that micro scale in terms of like wider events. This is the part you really want to be worried about for the next couple episodes, is what happens on Agmar, because that's just what I'm going to be talking about, is the factions of Agmar and kind of events around them and their creation. And first we're going to start off with that main fantasy faction, and this is the faction that I originally started with and then added a few other factions in there. And they're like somewhat of the good guys. I'll get more into like why I say somewhat of the good guys in a second, but the Middle Kingdom is a kind of high fantasy setting. So it's got predominantly humans. There's a mix of other species that are kind of reminiscent of like elves, dwarves, and other ones. And I will talk about those later. We've got the Middle Kingdom, right? So there you're going to have like a king in quote-unquote like present-day Agmar. It's actually currently ruled by a queen, and that's for a number of other reasons that I will get into way later again. Just like a lot of foreshadowing, so just hold on with me here. And then aside from the Middle Kingdom, their main opponent, which is also kind of in that morally gray area, is the Theocracy. And what's interesting about the Theocracy is I kind of have them in a steampunk, more of a weird war sort of style, right? So I start with steampunk because a lot of their technology kind of looks steampunk, maybe a little bit diesel punk more so, but then how they're running that technology comes from more of a weird war setting where they've run into some ancient technology that powers their present day technology. All right, and both the Middle Kingdom and the Theocracy are on different continents. The Middle Kingdom actually has some colonies over on the same continent as the Theocracy, and I'll go more into that in the specific Middle Kingdom podcast. But anyways, those are the two big players on Agmar itself. There's a few smaller factions, like there's the Dinterland Lords, which are it's like these three kind of larger islands all connected by land bridges, and that's where my variant of dwarf lives that I've called the Forgeborn, and that makes a little bit more sense later, but we'll get into that into the Dinterland specific episode of the cast. And then I have this kind of theme of elf that I call Aurelians, and that is because they're not quite elves. Like originally they were themed after elves, and then I realized I wanted something kind of different, mainly being that they have a sort of active camouflage that is like a biological active camouflage, and that again I'm going to talk that later during their specific cast, so I can go more in depth on that topic, because there's a lot there. I have a lot of notes from this. And then the last one is is a species. They're kind of broken up into tribes, and they'll, of course, like everything else, going to get a bigger spotlight later. But this is the Terravan. They're my more like self-brewed species. The only reason why they exist is because I needed like a valid reason for a four-armed bartender to exist in the universe, because I mean, what's better than a four-armed bartender, right? Like he's got four arms, twice as fast as your average bartender, sort of, and the idea that he can compound tasks between his two sets of hands. On top of all of that, I'm gonna jump over to this morally gray thing I was talking about, right? So the reason why I say that almost every like main faction is morally gray is because you've just got a lot of people in each faction who are just trying to survive, right? Like obviously there's some good people doing good things. There's also going to be evil people doing evil things. And then there's going to be people that just don't really care what's going on. They're just trying to live, so they may or may not get mixed into good guy, bad guy kind of stuff. It just depends, who's sitting there whispering into their ear. And speaking of the whispering in their ear, the reason why I say that is because I have set up they're sort of like a deity, but there's like a higher deity, spoiler. But basically there's these other beings that are in parallel dimensions. They're two separate parallel dimensions. Basically, one that has, for sake of simplicity right now, I'll of course get into them later, they're called demons, and they normally drag people down like the route of worshiping demons and having demons be, like your main focal point. They don't right out like show up and be like, hey, I'm a demon, you should do what I say. It's more of just like getting into what people would consider like those 7 deadly sins or cardinal sins, right? Mostly focusing on like envy, pride. Obviously they do a lot of murdering too, because it's like, how else do you really get up there? And then manipulation, of course. And I've got this other group where they're called dragons, and this is like, one, to keep it simpler, and two, they've got other names, and those play more into like the origin story of the galaxy, because they used to be part of the galaxy and then didn't, because basically a super weapon went off and separated the galaxy into parallel dimensions. And the dragons, they're kind of like the good guys, but basically they're only like the good guys because there's a group of dragons that of course don't care, and there's another group of dragons that care enough to basically try to combat the demons at every turn of their plans. So they're almost more so good guys out of spite than necessarily being good guys. And that's basically the short version of the Tales of Agmar, how it exists and why. If you have questions, feel free to drop them as a comment. If there's a part where you're like, hey, like that didn't really get a lot of information right now, just hang tight. I'm going to drop a couple episodes with this one episode, and hopefully that will get you started and it'll make a tiny bit more sense. Thanks again so much for sticking to the end of the podcast. I know this was kind of short. I just wanted to keep it short, give people an introduction to Tales of Agmar, what it is, how this is going to be. Looking forward, I'm actually going to pick up on the Middle Kingdom section of Tales of Agmar, so I'm just really going to focus in on there. And I'll give a little bit of like a deeper synopsis, basically, of like what that's going to look like. But for a little bit of a teaser, I'm going to be breaking into how the Middle Kingdom got started, where it's going currently, and more of their objectives in terms of Agmar, because they don't really know that there's anything outside of Agmar. They are also the main dragon worshipping faction, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that, possibly a little bit of the daily life of a person inside of the Middle Kingdom, and of course going to break down a bit of their technology level, their military strength, and then they actually have a sub-faction that's attached to them called the Gear Blades, and they're sort of like this warrior monk style of guys that are really cool. They, in short, make use of a pocket dimension. But before I spoil anything else, like I said, that'll be next episode. Wherever you found this podcast, I'm going to get it on a couple different platforms, but I just hope that you'll interact with it wherever it is. Drop a comment, leave a follow, and hope you keep sticking around. I'm going to keep working on improving the audio quality and my voice quality throughout this next little while, but Tales of Agmar is super exciting, and I know that if you like anything from fantasy to sci-fi to just good world building, good storytelling, you're really going to enjoy what I have coming. Now, in terms of things outside of this podcast, I don't have anything going like a Discord or whatnot yet. I don't really know like what people are going to want to interact with, so any thoughts or suggestions, again, feel free to drop that inside the comments. Other than that, I'm also working on a book for Tales of Agmar. The book is not yet finished. I'm still finishing up the first draft because I had some parts I wanted to rework in terms of like what things were named and how characters were shaped and whatnot. I will keep updating you guys on the book throughout the podcast. I'm hoping that by the time season 1 of this podcast is done, the book is almost done, if not done. Thanks again for coming around. Listen to me ramble to you about my Tales of Agmar, and again, hope you stick around, and we'll see you next cast.